Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. It is so great to see you all chiming in here and starting up. My name is Antonio Sacre. Most of you know that. And I see people from all around the country. It's amazing. We have Kentucky, we have California, we have Texas, we have Delaware. We also have a welcome in the chat. So teachers, if students have any questions, you can start throwing them in the chat. I'm going to tell two stories about the holidays as I experience them. And I'll do a mini lesson about how to read over the break, especially for reluctant readers. And then we'll see if there's any questions from students around the country. I'm so happy that you all are here. Here we go. I grew up in Delaware. There's a school in Delaware listening right now, I think. And in Delaware, every now and then, we would listen to the radio. If you don't know what a radio is, ask the old people in your family. And the radio during a big snowstorm would speak the magic words. No school tomorrow. We would have a snow day. We love snow days, especially if we had a test the next day. We get to stay home and not have to take the test. But snow days in Delaware meant sledding on the small hills that we could find, snowball fights with everybody in the neighborhood, making all kinds of forts and having a blast. Well, one night the radio said school was canceled, and my mom, who's from Boston, she says, "Get your snow pants ready. We're going to have fun tomorrow." Yeah, we were. And my brothers and I, we shared a room. We all went to sleep. And at 12 o'clock at night, my mom came into the room. She said, "Bundle up. It just stopped snowing." I looked at the clock. "Mom, it's midnight." She said, "I know. We're going to be the first ones to put our footprints in the snow." She woke up my brothers. We pulled our snow pants over our pajamas. We put on our hats and mittens and boots. And my mom opened the front door. And there was a blanket of snow covering everything. The cars parked on the street looked like just lumps underneath the snow. The bushes were little tiny forms making shapes in the snow. And the storm had passed and the moon was out. And we looked at the full moon at midnight on a winter's night. And my mom said, "Boys, look down at the ground." You children in California will never have this experience, or hopefully you might if you go to the mountains. We looked down on the ground, and the moon reflected in the snow turned the snow into millions of tiny diamonds and stars. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. We're just staring at those little diamonds and stars. And my mom said, "Let's make snow angels." And we crawled out into the snow, and my mom threw her arms and flopped back down into the snow. And she moved her hands this way and she moved her legs that way. And she carefully stepped out. And there in the snow, if you used your imagination, was a perfect impression of an angel. And then my brothers and I did the same. And then my mom took a little tiny snowball. Now, California kids, you don't know what this is. You scoop up the snow, you make it into a ball, you drop it onto the ground, and you roll it, and you roll it, and you roll it, and you roll it, and it gets bigger and bigger. And soon we had the base of a snowman. And then we got another ball, a little bit smaller in the middle and the head. My mom put two little stones for the eyes. She had a carrot in her pocket for the nose, and we had a little mouth we made there, and we had our snowman. And then my mom said, "It's time for the midnight snowball fight." My brothers and I were awesome snowball fight guys. We were awesome baseball players. We said, "Yeah, snowball fight." And my brother Robert said, "Hey, Mom, is it going to be me and you against Antonio and Henry?" And my mom said, "Nope." And Henry said, "Mom, me and you against Antonio and Robbie." And my mom said, "Nope." And I said, "Mom, you and me against those two kids." And my mom said, "Nope." "Well, who are the teams going to be?" And my mom said, "Me against you three." And we said, "Oh, Mom, that's not fair. We're awesome snowball fighters. We're awesome baseball players. There's three of us and one of you." And she goes, "You're right. It's not fair for you." "Why, Mom?" She says, "Because I'm the champion snowball fighter from Boston, Massachusetts, 1954. My brother Robert said, "You're the champion snowball fighter from Boston, Massachusetts? I didn't know that, Mom. Where's your trophy?" She says, "I don't know. I lost it, but I'm the champion, and I'm going to let you three go first." And so we did. We made perfect snowballs. And my brother Robert said, "On three, boys." 1, 2, 3, and 3 awesome snowball fighting, baseball playing brothers threw 3 snowballs directly at my mom. And my mom did some Matrix stuff. Those of you who've watched the movie The Matrix, you might know what this is. She jumped in the air, she spun, she cartwheeled, she backflipped, and all of the snowballs missed my mom. Mom, how did you do that? She says, I'm the champion snowball fighter from Boston, Massachusetts. And my mom did something that I can't explain. She reached both of her hands down into the snow and she came up holding 4 snowballs, 2 in each hand. How did she do it? And she says, my turn. And she reached both of her hands back and she threw 4 snowballs at her 3 sons. 1 smashed Robert, 1 hit Henry, 2 hit me. Robert said, time out, Mom. That's no fair. And he says, we need a plan. He gathered the 2 brothers together and we all started humming. My mom said she could see our breath going up like little clouds of steam above our heads. And my brother came up with a great plan. He says, all right, we both can grab 2 snowballs in each hand like Mom, and we can go around a circle. And we had this plan. So Robert had 2 snowballs and 2 snowballs. Henry had 2 snowballs and 2 snowballs. I had 2 snowballs and 2 snowballs. Younger kids, how many snowballs were there with the 3 brothers? That's 4 times 3. Older kids, what's the cube root of 1,000 plus 2? Adults, it was 12. And so my brother Robert was on one side, Henry was on another. I was there, and my brother said, on 3, boys, and 1, 2, 3, and 4 perfect snowballs with each brother came right towards my mom. And my mom jumped and spun and cartwheeled and flipped, and all 4 of Robert's snowballs hit me. All 4 of Henry's snowballs hit Robert. All 4 of my snowballs hit Henry. And we said, time out, no fair. My mom says, She reaches into the ground, comes back with 5 snowballs in each hand. 5 times 2. What is it? Cube root of 1,000. What is it? And she threw those, time out. And my brother Robert came up with a diabolical plan. If you don't know what diabolical is, watch Tom and Jerry or get a dictionary. And my brother said this. And what we did, none of you are allowed to do. My brother Robert started a small snowball into a bigger snowball, into a bigger snowball, into the absolute biggest snowball that he could pick up. He said, Henry and Antonio, you go distract Mom. So we walked in front of my mom and we distracted her. Hey, Mom, tell us about the olden days. And my mom said, oh, you want to hear about the olden days? And my mom was like, blah, 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 blah. And then what happened? Blah, 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 blah. And as she's blah, blah, blahing, Robert is grabbing that huge snowball. He can barely hold it over his head. The soft snow is muffling his footsteps as he's crunching those diamonds reflected by the moon. And he's holding that snowball. And we're like, and then what happened, Mom? Blah, 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 blah. And blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah. And Robert holds that snowball and he throws it, not fast because it was so heavy, slowly. It came and it smacked my mom right on the back. Down she went. Robert went, yeah. I went, yeah. Henry went, you killed Mom. There she was under an avalanche of snow. Her face like this. We couldn't even see the steam coming out of her mouth. Robert said, Mom. I said, Mom. Mom is dead. We killed Mom. And Robert said, no. And I said, no. And as we're crying, all of a sudden, muffled in the snow, we hear a hee, 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 hee. We look down and my mom jumps up with 15 snowballs in each hand. What's 15 times 2? And she said, time out, Mom, you win. She says, that's right. I win because I'm the champion snowball fighter from Delaware now. That's what it is. And in we went. We had hot chocolate. We took off our wet clothes. We put on new pajamas. My mom tucked us in at 1 o'clock in the morning and we fell asleep. The next morning we got up and looked out at now the trampled snow. We saw the angels. We saw the snowman we made. We saw the indentation of that huge snowball that almost killed my mom. And that night, my brothers and I told that story. And we've been telling that story every winter ever since. That is the story of the midnight snowball fight. So I had the lucky circumstance of having two families, one that lived up north in Boston, my mom's Boston family, and my father's Cuban family that lived in Miami in the neighborhood of Little Havana. And when my son was born over 13 years ago, I wanted him to know about how the Cubans celebrate Christmas Eve. We call it La Noche Buena. And so I did what I love to do. I went to the library and I asked my librarian to give me books about La Noche Buena. And she got some very good nonfiction books, but there was no fiction picture books about La Noche Buena. And so I did what writers do. I wrote the book that I wanted to see in the library. And I loved what I wrote and I shared it with my kids and they seemed to like it. And I sent it to a publisher and they said no. But I sent it to another publisher and they said no. And I kept sending it to publishers until finally I got a yes. And the story I wrote and was finally published is this story, La Noche Buena, a Christmas Eve story. When little Nina got to her grandmother's house the day before Christmas, she said, Abuela, yo te quiero. I love you. And Abuela said, oh, Nina, yo te quiero también. I love you too. And Nina said, but I think I love the snow more. Abuela said, ¿Cómo es posible? Why? You love the snow more than your grandma? And Nina said, no, Abuela, it's just that my other family lives up north where it snows at Christmas time. We have snowball fights. We make snowmen. We go sledding. But you live down here in Miami where it's so hot. I don't know. There's no snow. It's not going to be as fun. She said, it's not going to be as fun. There is no snow down here, mijita. She said, but we celebrate La Noche Buena. What's La Noche Buena, Abuela? Oh, Nina, you don't know what Noche Buena is? It's the best feast of the year for many Cuban families. They celebrate it in Mexico. They celebrate it in Central America. They celebrate it in Portugal even. No, come into the kitchen. And Nina went into the kitchen. And all of the primas and tías estaban cortando cebollas. All of the aunties and cousins were chopping onions. Chop, 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 chop. Another auntie was chopping onions too. Chop, 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 chop. A third auntie was very old, and she was chopping onions very slowly. Yeah. Chop. A fourth auntie was even older and chopped even more slowly. Chop. She was really old. She was so old. And the fifth auntie was chopping so quickly, onions were going everywhere. Everyone was crying. Abuela gathered those onions, threw them into the pot. She poured in some olive oil and some salt and pepper, and the smells of those spices and the oil and the onions filled the kitchen. The sound of it crackling in the pot was so exciting. The aunties kept chopping, and soon there was a beautiful sauce that was made in the pan. Abuela said, el sofrito está hecho. The sofrito is the name of the sauce the Cubans make that they put on meat or on salads or vegetables. She said, Nina, take it to your uncle. He's in the backyard at the grill. So Nina took the sofrito to her uncle, and he poured it on the barbecue, and it smelled even better. And Nina was getting so hungry. And then Abuela took the tables outside and put them underneath the stars. Nina said, we're going to eat outside on Christmas Eve? Wow, we never get to eat outside up north at Christmas. That's how we celebrate La Noche Buena. And Nina went and picked fruit from the fruit trees in the backyard with her cousins and brought the fruit to the table. And there it was, all of that food. All of the uncles wearing their guayabera shirts, their beautiful shirts, the aunties with their dresses, and Abuela at the head of the table. She held up her glass. She said, let us give thanks that we are all here together. And everyone said, yay. And let us be sad that some of our family is not here. And they put their glasses down and said, oh. And let us be grateful that Nina came down from up north to celebrate Noche Buena, Christmas Eve with her Cuban family. Yay. And let us be sad that she has no snow to play in. Oh. And let us be grateful that we have this wonderful food to eat. Yay. and be sad that some people don't have enough food to eat. Aw. And let us be grateful that the basketball team won last night. Yay! And sad that the football team lost last weekend. Aw. And Nina whispered to her uncle, ¿Cuándo vamos a comer? When are we going to eat? And Abuela heard her and said, let us again give thanks for Nina. Yay! And be sad that she has no patience. Aw. And Abuela went on, toasting everybody and everything until finally, they began to eat. And Nina never had a meal as delicious as that. Arroz, frijoles negros, atasajo, ropa vieja, carne, pollo empasado, y después they had flan, this delicious custardy caramel, and Nina had never eaten a meal as great as that meal. And after that meal, Abuela said, a la misa del gallo. And Nina said, the mass of the rooster? What's that? And her uncle said, it's midnight mass. And they went to mass at midnight. Midnight mass in Boston happened at 5 o'clock and was over like 20 minutes later. But midnight mass in Little Havana in Miami happened at midnight and it was over at 1 o'clock in the morning. And afterwards, everyone had to hug every other member of the congregation. It took a half an hour. And when they got home, Nina was so tired when Tio, her uncle, put a record on the record player. Does anybody know what a record is? They put a record on the record player and the music came out. Celia Cruz, La Reina de la Salsa, the most famous salsa singer player from Cuba, and then Tito Puente. And they put on all kinds of music. Gloria Estefan on the Miami Sound Machine. And they were playing and dancing salsa and cumbia and merengue. And when they were done, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. Everybody cleaned up the house. Nina couldn't believe the party lasted that long. Abuela took Nina into bed. Nina said, Abuela, echo de menos la nieve. I still miss the snow, but this was the best Christmas Eve ever. Can I come back next year and bring all my up north cousins to celebrate Noche Buena with my Cuban family? And Abuela said, Nina, nothing would make me happier. And that's the story of Nina and La Noche Buena meal. I wrote that book for my kids. It became a book that is out. You can find it at your local library. Some of you on this Zoom have it in your classroom library. So you can take a look at the book and see how it's different, the way I wrote it, from the way that I tell that story. And I tell you both of those stories. The story of a midnight snowball fight with my family, the story of a hot Christmas Eve in Miami, because that's the way my family celebrated it. Kids on the call, I know there's some 5th graders and 3rd graders and some high school kids. You all have some family traditions. Some of them you might love. Some of them might be really boring right now. Some of them you might do and you don't even know why. So I'm going to ask you as writers to investigate some of the traditions that you have coming up. Hanukkah is coming up here soon. Kwanzaa is happening. La Virgen de Guadalupe, Las Posadas. These are different traditions from around the world. The solstice, the winter solstice of December 21st is happening. What are some things you do with your family? What are some books that you read? What are some songs that you listen to? What are some shows that you watch? Maybe some of you go to see the Nutcracker. That's one of the traditions in my family. These are things that are part of this part of the year and things that you might write about as you get older. Those are the 2 stories I had planned for you. I wanted to talk for a couple of minutes about reading, and then I'm going to see if there's any questions from any students on the call. We have some students from all over, and if you want, you can, teachers, you can put their questions into the chat. I am going to end it right at 9:30. I know a lot of you have, a lot of you are in school right now. Some of you are probably watching this recorded. So I have a question about reading. I meet a lot of students who love to read, and I meet a lot of students who don't love to read. And I have students who love to read sometimes, but not at other times. When I think about reading, I think about the things that are fun to read and the things that are not fun to read. And I also think about reading as an athlete. So my daughter is playing volleyball, and there's a element of practice that has to happen. We have to practice something that's difficult. You're not quite doing it. They're practicing their serves. It's hard to get the ball right. It's hard to hit it hard enough over the net. And you just got to practice and practice, and you're not getting the ball over the net. And you just keep practicing, and it's really frustrating. And then all of a sudden, one day, the ball goes over the net, but it lands out of bounds. Oh, and you got to practice and practice. And then if you keep practicing, eventually it's going to go over the net, and you're going to have that skill. So reading is a little bit like being an athlete. I want kids to read things that are very fun for them to read. In our house, we have a bunch of comics all over the place. We have comics written for younger kids and older kids. We have Garfield comics. We have Calvin and Hobbes comics. We have graphic novels everywhere. And some parents think that reading comics and graphic novels is not real reading. Many teachers I know realize that that's not entirely the case, but some parents think, no, I don't want you to read that junk. You should read something really hard like War and Peace, or Crime and Punishment, or The Brothers Karamazov, or Ananina Karenina. You should read in different languages. And you know what? You should. Reading is a physical, it's like a physical, really hard physical exercise for your brain. Every time you read anything, your brain is doing some incredibly difficult, demanding cognitive work. Any reading you do is a great workout for your brain. And so I want you to find joy in what you're reading this holiday season. My son, who's in eighth grade, his teacher assigned a pretty difficult book for reading over the holiday break. And he's like, she's mean. And I'm like, no, she wants your brain to get strong. But I also want you to really love reading. So one thing you can do, you can go to your local library. If your library at school is busy or your librarian is not there, your local library, all of you, I can say this without even knowing where you're from, all of you live close to a local library. Walk up to your local librarian and ask them, I want a super fun, super easy book to read for the holidays. And that librarian is going to find the perfect, super easy, super fun book for you for the holidays. And then your parents can ask the same librarian, can you find something that is not super easy, but still fun for my child to read? Your librarian is going to help you find some perfect books for you. The last thing I will say is there are a lot of books that you can listen to on tape, books on tape or books on CD or books on Audible or on whatever streaming device. And hearing the stories just with the words instead of the pictures is also really good brain activity. So I hope that you pay attention to your family traditions and maybe think about them as things you can write about. I hope that you read a lot over the holidays. And I am super glad that a lot of you were here to listen to my stories. I'm going to check in the chat and see if anyone has any questions. You can drop them into the chat. And I'm happy that you are here. I'm seeing that I think there's a fifth grader there. So if you have any questions you'd like to do, as I'm waiting for questions to come in, I'll just kind of keep chatting a little bit. The other thing that I like to do is I like to challenge myself when I'm reading with a book that's just a slightly harder than what I'm I love spy novels. I love crime novels. I love novels of mystery. But I also, every now and then, will challenge myself to read a really hard nonfiction book about a difficult part of history or about something that's happening that's a little bit difficult to understand. So I see this from fifth grade class. What is my favorite winter holiday? Oh, it's so hard because I have these two families. So my favorite winter holiday, the La Noche Buena, I really have to say, it's just this amazing party. And the way my family celebrated it, all of us getting together, it is a huge dance party. It's a huge food party. And it's a huge telling stories party. We would always tell stories about the other people in the family. And each year the stories would get bigger and bigger and more exciting, more fun. Here's another question. How many books have I written? That's a super interesting question. I've published over 20 books. So I have 5 picture books that have been published, including my newest book that just came out this year called My Name is Cool. And then La Noche Buena is a Christmas book. That book. all of my books are available on Amazon or at your local public library. They make good gifts, family members and teachers. But I've also written a bunch of nonfiction books. I wrote a book about taxes. It's called Everyone Pays Taxes. I've written about a dozen nonfiction books. I've written how governments spend money. I've written about immigration. I've written about some history. I've written about some famous athletes. I wrote about the famous soccer star Pele. I wrote about an amazing climber, Alex Honnold. So I've done a lot of writing about those, but I'm also writing a bunch of books that have never been published. Part of being a writer is just always writing. I'm constantly writing. I'm writing something new today. When I get off of the Zoom, I'll go back to writing. Oh, what is my favorite comic? I love so many comics. So when I was a kid, the way we got comics was the newspaper. I don't think any of you know what a newspaper is. But when you open up a newspaper, there's like a whole bunch of different comics just that comes during the day. So Peanuts was one of the first comics that I ever got really excited about. And then I got excited about Garfield. When I was a kid, a comic called Calvin and Hobbes came up. This is a really interesting comic strip because Calvin has a little stuffed tiger that is a live tiger when Calvin looks at him, but is a stuffed tiger when adults look at him. And Calvin speaks as a 6-year-old boy with a college kid's vocabulary. So you can read that comic strip and have really fun, a lot of fun watching the tiger and Calvin have fun, but you can also read it as a real reader with a dictionary to try to figure out some of the words that are in the comic book. And so that's kind of interesting. I also love, there's a bunch of new comics that have come out relatively recently. There's a comic called Boondocks, which is now a very interesting, kind of a super interesting take on everything. So comic books were a way that got me into reading. So when I was a kid, my dad would always say, you got to read real books. He would say real books. And I'd be reading these comic books. And what ends up happening is, as I still love comics, I still read comics, but it leads me into books that really challenge my brain. My daughter is a climber, and she's stretching to do pull-ups, something you need for climbing. And she has to work really, really hard to figure out how to do it. And the harder she works, the easier the pull-ups are. So I think that comics lead me to reading stronger books that really make my brain really strong. I now feel pretty excited about that. Teachers, I am offering this thing, this Zoom storytelling once a month. The next one is going to be January 25th, and it is called Scrubbed Storytime. I know that a lot of students are moving into nonfiction and expository writing. So I have a really fun, silly story about a time my brothers and I had an epic bathtub bubble bath fight fun. And that's a story that leads me into what I want to talk about with some expository writing that some of you are moving towards. And then my new book that just came out is called My Name is Cool. If you're interested, please check it out. Teachers, thank you for joining the call. I really appreciate it. Those of you who are watching this on YouTube, thank you for coming in. And if you want to reach me, you can reach me through my website or my email. Send me questions about which story times you'd like me to do as the school year progresses. And the students that I'm going to see in the new year, I cannot wait to see you. Miss Friedman in your class, I can't wait to see you. Thinking about nonfiction writing, Miss Friedman, is the impetus from you, actually. Muchísimas gracias. Te veo. Felices fiestas. Happy holidays. And thank you all for my snowy story time. Take care. Keep reading and reading and reading and reading and reading. And I will leave it there. Join me for January 25th for Scrub Storytime. Thank you all very much.